Hi, I'm Ross Mayfield, Investment Strategy Analyst at Baird, and we are back for another weekly update with our friends at Strategas. Today, I'm really excited to be joined by Managing Director and Washington Research Analyst Jeannette Lowe. We're going to unpack all things debt ceiling deal. Jeannette, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you, Ross?
I'm doing really well. Thank you so much for asking. Up top, I do just want to say I think your all's debt ceiling coverage was instrumental in guiding our clients and advisors through what was a pretty tumultuous period. But it doesn't stop there. And now we need to unpack the deal. I think one of the most important pieces of this is the resumption of student loan payments later this fall. There was a moratorium on those. And given how important the consumer and consumer spending has been to the economy over the last 6 to 12 months, I think this is a pretty big deal. Could you unpack what was in the deal and how it impacts y'all's outlook going forward for the U.S. economy?
Yeah, absolutely. So, first of all, the debt ceiling deal actually had quite a few things in it, as you mentioned. So, the most important thing is that it lifts the debt ceiling until January 1st of 2025. So, we will not have to deal with this at all next year or through the rest of this year. The second thing that it does do is it imposes caps on discretionary spending for the next 2 fiscal years. So that will ultimately lead to about a $1 trillion decrease in spending over 10 years. And there are a number of other things. So there's non-binding spending caps that are also within the bill. We'll have to see going forward if that actually means that those will be enacted or if they will actually go above those levels. There was some modest energy permitting reform. We think Congress is going to come back to this issue later this year to get some more pieces of that put together. There was the moratorium, a piece about the moratorium on student loan payments. So the debt ceiling deal actually forces the administration to restart those payments at the end of August. And as you mentioned, that is really important for a consumer piece because the estimate is that it's going to be about an average of $380 per month payment for people who still need to start making those payments again. The Supreme Court also is going to still be deciding on the student loan case this month. They may overturn Biden's student loan debt forgiveness. And if they do so, that one of the thought processes was that Biden might try to then extend the moratorium into the future. But this bill kind of says no, payments need to restart at the end of August. So if you're looking at, potentially, $380 payments on average, we're looking at that as being about a 0.2 to a 0.4% hit to GDP going forward towards the end of the year as we're moving into a slower economy. And some of the other things that we've seen this year too is we've seen lower income tax refunds as well. So we are starting to see some headwinds emerge for the consumer as we move into the latter part of this year.
Right. So something to keep an eye on as we head into the fall. And again, with the consumer pulling so much weight in the economy these days. So pivoting, the debt ceiling is done, at least this round, but it sets the stage for what you all think to be a kind of a multi-year process of additional fiscal austerity. So interest costs on the national debt set to rise. And again, the debt ceiling really just being stage one in a multi-year process of financial markets imposing fiscal discipline on policymakers. What does that look like to you, and how does that play out in markets?
Yeah, so as you know, we've been pointing out that how much fiscal austerity was included in this debt ceiling deal would be really important for financial markets. So we looked back at the 2011 debt ceiling fight. We had $2 trillion of spending cuts that were attached to that bill. That really put a big correction in the market because the market had to readjust for lower economic growth. Now, the spending cuts that are included in this deal are not as large. So they're a little bit more muted. It wasn't as big of a bite as fiscal austerity, but as you said, this is just the first step. And because it doesn't really make a big difference in the fact that we're still continuing to see higher net interest costs to service our debt because of higher interest rates, we still have a long-term fiscal picture that is not sustainable. And so that needs to be taken into account. So this could be something like, might see more fights over the budget in September when they need to get that done. There could be budget fights next year when that budget comes due. Speaker McCarthy has said that he would like to set up a bipartisan commission to look at long-term spending costs. So that's another area where they might be focused. They might be focused on how to make sure that Medicare and Social Security are solvent going forward. So this is just one piece of it. We could see a number of different pieces come up at different points over the next couple of years. So we are entering this period of more fiscal austerity, and politics will play a big role in this. The one thing I do want to mention, just to kind of bring it back to the consumer piece that we talked about, is that even though we're talking about fiscal austerity, one thing we actually could see later this year is a small fiscal stimulus package. So this could be something where you would see an extension of the child tax credit, which is something that the Democrats are looking for, and it could be paired with a resumption of the full R&D tax credit to allow full expensing and allow 100% expensing as well. So that could be paired as a small package that we might see at the end of the year. I know it seems a little crazy to be talking about as we just did spending cuts, but particularly if the US economy is slowing in the coming months and we get towards the end of the year, that actually could be a stimulus for policymakers to actually get a deal. And if we're also looking at, who the key players are, the House Ways and Means chairman, he comes from a very low income district in Missouri. And so he will also be looking to try to give relief to his constituents and to other consumers across the country. And so that is something that we're also looking out for towards the end of the year. It also helps with re-election prospects for 2024. So that's something else that policymakers might be looking towards. But so in general, we're looking at this larger fiscal austerity narrative, but at the same time, there still is this option to do a small fiscal stimulus package towards the end of the year that could benefit the consumer with something like an extension of the child tax credit.
Right. So no shortage of hard and important decisions to be made down the line. We'll keep an eye out for those as they come up. But Jeannette, I want to thank you so much for the time today. Again, the debt ceiling coverage was invaluable for ourselves and our clients. So thanks so much, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again soon shortly.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ross.